The church bells wouldn't stop ringing. Each chime reverberated through my chest, through the stiff boning of my wedding dress that suddenly felt too tight, too white, too much like a burial shroud. I stood at the altar, bouquet trembling in my hands, white roses and baby's breath I'd chosen because they symbolized new beginnings. The irony tastes metallic on my tongue now. 300 guests sat behind me. I could feel their eyes drilling into my back, could hear the rustle of programs, the whispered questions that started as soft murmurs and grew louder with every passing second. The organist had stopped playing 5 minutes ago. Now there was only silence, broken by those damned bells and the sound of my own breathing, short, shallow gasps that made the bodice strain. Adrian stood across from me, but he wasn't looking at me anymore. His eyes, those green eyes I'd fallen in love with for years earlier, were fixed on the church doors. His jaw ticked, clenching and unclenching. A muscle jumped near his temple. His hands, the hands that should have been reaching for mine, were curled into fists at his sides. "Adrian." My voice came out a whisper, barely audible over the roar of blood in my ears. He finally looked at me then, and something cold slid down my spine. There was no love in his eyes, no warmth, just disgust. Sharp, unfiltered disgust that made my stomach plummet. "I can't do this." The words hung suspended between us. The priest, Father Miguel, the same priest who'd baptized me, took a step back. Someone in the crowd gasped. My mother. It had to be my mother. I knew that particular inhale, had heard it thousands of times growing up whenever I disappointed her. "What do you mean you can't? Do you really think I would marry someone as fat as you?" The words struck like blows, each syllable a slap. My bouquet slipped from my fingers, white roses scattering down the altar steps. The soft thud they made against the marble sounded impossibly loud in the sudden, tomb-like silence of the church. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My body turned to stone, every muscle locked while my mind screamed inside the cage of my skull. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be happening. Not here. Not now. Not after everything we'd. "Adrian, please." I hated how my voice cracked, hated the tears burning behind my eyes. "You said you loved." I lied. 2 words. 2 words that erased 4 years of my life. Behind him, I noticed movement. His mother, Eleanor, in her immaculate champagne-colored dress that cost more than most people's cars, stood from the front pew. The click of her heels on the marble echoed as she approached. She didn't look at me with pity or shock. She looked pleased. "You should be ashamed of yourself," she said, her voice carrying effortlessly in the perfect acoustics of the church. "To even step outside looking like that, let alone stand here in white pretending to be a bride." The tears came then, hot, relentless, ruining the makeup that had taken 3 hours to apply. I felt the mascara streaking, tasted the salt on my lips. My hands shook as I tried wiping my face, but the cathedral-length veil kept catching, tangling around my fingers like it meant to suffocate me. "For years," I whispered, "for years, Adrian, you proposed to me. You got down on one knee at the place where we first met. And you." That was before I realized what I was settling for. He adjusted his tie, the tie I'd chosen for him, silver with tiny blue flowers that matched his pocket square. Before my mother helped me see clearly. Eleanor's smile was as sharp as shattered glass. "My son deserves better. He always has." I looked between them, mother and son, and suddenly saw everything I'd ignored. The way she'd always watched me at family dinners calculating. The comments she'd made about my eating habits, disguised as concern. The way Adrian would fall silent in her presence, like a puppet waiting for its strings to be pulled. "The wedding's off," Adrian announced to the entire church, his voice carrying all the way to the back. "There will be no reception." He turned and walked down the aisle. Just like that. No explanation for the hundreds of guests. No apology. His footsteps echoed, steady, unhurried, as if he were taking a casual stroll instead of destroying someone's life in front of everyone they knew. Eleanor lingered for a moment, giving me one last slow, deliberate glance. "The dress doesn't help, dear." Nothing would. Then she followed her son, her heels clicking a cruel rhythm that sounded like laughter. I stood alone at the altar in a dress that had cost me 6 months of savings while 300 people stared, some with pity, some with second-hand embarrassment. Some people, and these hurt the most, stared with a kind of morbid fascination, like they were watching a car crash unfold in slow motion. My legs finally gave out. I didn't fall in some dramatic, swooning collapse. It was more of a slow sink to the floor, the skirts of my dress pooling around me like spilled milk. I sat there on the altar steps, surrounded by the scattered roses, while people began filing out. They whispered as they passed. I couldn't make out the words, but I didn't need to. I could imagine all of them. Poor thing. She should have known. Did you see it coming? What did she expect? My father was the one who finally came for me.
He didn't speak.
He just helped me to my feet and guided me out through a side door, away from the remaining guests. My mother followed behind us, silent for once in her life. The wedding coordinator fluttered around like a frantic moth, asking about the reception, the flowers, the cake, the 3-tier monstrosity with sugar roses that had cost a fortune. Cancel it all, I heard myself say. Cancel everything. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew you couldn't cancel humiliation. You couldn't return shame like an unwanted wedding gift. You couldn't get a refund on the feeling of your heart being torn out and put on display for everyone's entertainment. The ride home was silent. 20 minutes that felt like 20 years. I was still in my wedding dress, the veil crumpled in my lap. I stared down at my engagement ring. 2 carats, princess cut. Exactly what I had dreamed about since I was a little girl. The diamond caught the light as we passed beneath street lamps, scattering tiny rainbows across the car interior. Beautiful lies, every one of them. Before we continue, please write in the comments which country you're watching this video from. We love knowing where our global family is tuning in. And if this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe. Your support helps us bring even more epic revenge tales from real life. Enjoy listening.
I didn't sleep.
How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I was back at that altar, hearing those words echo through the church. Do you really think I would marry someone as fat as you? The wedding dress hung over my closet door like a ghost. I'd been too exhausted to put it away properly, too shattered to care about preserving it. What was the point? It was supposed to be worn once on the happiest day of my life. Instead, it had become the costume I wore to my own public execution. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Texts, calls, Facebook notifications. I turned it face down hours ago, but I could still hear it vibrating against the nightstand. The sound felt like insects crawling beneath my skin. At 3 a.m., I finally looked. 47 missed calls. 93 text messages. Over 200 Facebook notifications. Someone had filmed it. Of course someone had filmed it. We lived in an age where people recorded everything, where personal tragedy became viral entertainment with a single click. The video was already everywhere. Groom humiliates bride at altar had 16 million views and climbing. I watched it once, just once. Seeing it from the congregation's perspective was somehow even worse than living it. I looked so happy in those first moments, standing there with my bouquet, waiting for my life to begin. You could pinpoint the exact second my expression changed, the precise moment my smile died. The camera caught everything. The roses falling, my knees buckling, my hands trembling as I tried to fix my veil. The comments were a mix of cruelty and pity. She should have known he was out of her league. No one deserves that. Maybe this will motivate her to lose weight. That man is trash. But honestly, look at the size of her. I hurled my phone across the room. It hit the wall with a sharp, satisfying crack. The sun was rising, painting my bedroom walls a soft pink, the same shade as the bridesmaid dresses I'd chosen. My sister and 3 best friends had worn them. They'd looked beautiful, standing beside me for all of 5 minutes before everything fell apart. Someone knocked on my door. "Honey," my mother's voice tentative. I brought coffee. I didn't answer, but she came in anyway. She'd changed out of her mother of the bride outfit, the navy dress with the matching jacket she'd bought specially for the occasion. Now she wore jeans and an old sweater, her hair pulled into a messy bun. She looked older than she had yesterday. Tired. The whole internet knows, I said, my voice raw from crying. She set the coffee on my nightstand and sat on the edge of my bed. I know. Everyone saw. He planned it, didn't he? He and Eleanor. They planned to humiliate me as publicly as possible. My mother was quiet for a long moment, then said softly, I think so. Yes. I laughed, but the sound that came out was wrong, bitter and sharp. At least someone got their money's worth from the videographer. Don't what? Make jokes? What else am I supposed to do, Mom? The entire world just watched the worst moment of my life. They're dissecting my body, my value, my voice cracked. Fresh tears burned my eyes. She pulled me into a hug, and I let her, even though some part of me wanted to shove the entire world away. She smelled like coffee and the vanilla lotion she'd worn my entire life. Safe smells. Home smells. Do you want to know what I think? She asked softly. That I should have lost weight before the wedding. She pulled back, cupping my face between her palms.
No.
I think Adrian is a coward who let his mother run his life. I think Eleanor is a miserable woman who couldn't stand the idea of her son being happy with someone she didn't personally select. And I think you're beautiful, inside and out. Anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve you. The rest of the world doesn't agree. Since when has the rest of the world's opinion mattered more than the truth? I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But truth is a slippery thing, hard to hold on to when millions of strangers are evaluating your worth based on a 2-minute video. My phone buzzed from where it had landed on the floor. The screen was cracked but still functional. Another notification. Another comment. Another person weighing in on whether I deserved love based on the number sewn into the back of my dress. I need to be alone for a while, I said. My mother nodded and kissed my forehead. I'll be downstairs if you need me. When the door closed, I picked up my phone. The crack cut right across the center of the screen, warping everything a little. Fitting, really, nothing looked right anymore. There was a text from an unknown number. You don't know me, but I know Eleanor. There are things you should know about your ex-fiancé and his family. Things that might interest you. If you want revenge, real revenge, call me. Attached was a photo, a bank statement with Adrian's name printed at the top. The balance was far higher than it should have been for someone working at his father's struggling insurance firm. Far higher. And every deposit came from a company I recognized. My father's company. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady, too steady, as I stared at that bank statement. 4 years of deposits. Regular. Substantial. Adding up to the exact total of my wedding savings. My family's contribution. The rage that hit me wasn't hot. It was cold. Focused. Sharp enough to cut through bone. It crystallized into something harder than diamonds. I called the number. The coffee shop was nearly empty at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. I'd chosen a corner booth with my back to the wall, where I could see everyone who walked in, but no one would notice me unless they looked hard. Old habits from a lifetime spent trying to take up less space. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was about to meet a stranger who claimed to have information that could destroy my ex-fiancé. She was late. I sipped my black coffee. I'd given up cream and sugar yesterday, some twisted act of self-punishment, and watched the door. Every time it opened, my pulse spiked. An elderly man buying a newspaper. A mother wrangling 2 toddlers. A college kid with a laptop. Then her. I knew it was her before she even glanced my way. Something about how she moved. Purposeful. Furious. Like she was slicing her way through the air itself. She was older than I expected. Maybe early 50s, with silver-streaked hair pulled into a severe bun. Her clothes were expensive, but understated. The kind of effortless old-money elegance Eleanor always tried to imitate, but never quite managed. She slid into the seat across from me without a greeting, placing a leather portfolio on the table between us. "You came," she said. "You had my attention with the bank statement." She smiled, but the expression never touched her eyes. That was just the appetizer. "Who are you?" "Victoria Ashmont." The name meant nothing to me, though she said it like it should. Eleanor's former best friend. Former business partner. Former victim.
Former, she repeated.
I don't stay anyone's victim for long. She opened the portfolio. And neither should you. Inside were documents, bank statements, yes, but also contracts, emails, photographs. I picked up one of the photos. Eleanor at what looked like a charity gala, laughing with a man who wasn't her husband. Adrian's father was nowhere near the frame. She's been having affairs for years, Victoria said. Her husband knows. He doesn't care as long as she stays discreet. Why should I care about Eleanor's affairs? You shouldn't, but you should care about this. She pulled out another document, a contract between Adrian and my father's company. Consultation fees, she said. Except Adrian never consulted on anything. Your father's been paying him for 4 years. My stomach twisted. My father would never. Your father didn't know, she cut in. Adrian forged his signature. Used his position at the insurance firm to make it look legitimate. He's been embezzling from your family since the day you started dating. The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, the air too thin, the walls closing in around me. That's why he dated me, I whispered. For access to my father's company. Initially, yes. But then something changed. Victoria slid another photo across the table. This one was recent, Adrian at a restaurant I knew well. The same place he'd taken me for our anniversary 3 months ago. But he wasn't alone. A blonde woman sat across from him, their hands intertwined on the table. Who is she? Melissa Crawford. Pharmaceutical money. Eleanor's handpicked choice for her son's bride. How long? 6 months. 6 months. He'd been cheating on me for 6 months, while still taking my father's money. Still planning our wedding. Still telling me he loved me every night before bed. Why didn't he just break up with me? I asked, feeling my throat tighten. Victoria let out a bitter laugh. Because he needed the money. The Crawfords are rich, but cautious. They wanted to see Adrian establish himself before they approved the marriage. Your father's money was helping him do exactly that. So what? He was going to marry me, take more money, then divorce me? No, Victoria's eyes hardened. The plan changed 2 weeks ago, when Melissa's father had a heart attack. She inherited everything immediately. Adrian didn't need your family's money anymore, and Eleanor convinced him to humiliate you instead. Make it so public, so cruel, that you'd never dare come after them for the embezzlement. They were counting on me being too broken to fight back. Yes. I stared at the evidence spread across the table. 4 years of lies, arranged neatly in black and white. 4 years of being used, manipulated, stolen from, and then publicly discarded the moment I stopped being useful. Why are you helping me? I asked quietly. Victoria didn't answer right away. Instead, she pulled out a final photograph. It was old and faded, the edges softened with time. 2 young women standing on a beach, laughing. One was clearly Eleanor, decades younger. The same sharp cheekbones, unmistakable. The other. You are beautiful, I murmured. Her voice came out flat. I was also engaged to Eleanor's brother. Until Eleanor decided I wasn't good enough for their family. She destroyed my engagement, my reputation, my business. It took me 20 years to rebuild. And now you want revenge. I want justice. For both of us. She leaned forward. Eleanor made a mistake. She put properties in Adrian's name to avoid taxes. The house they live in. The Aspen vacation home. The investment accounts. All of it is technically his. My pulse kicked hard. And Adrian made a mistake too, she continued. He gave you power of attorney when you got engaged. Remember? For the wedding planning, so you could sign contracts. I did remember. It had felt romantic at the time, a gesture of trust. I'd barely skimmed the document before signing it, champagne flute in hand. He never revoked it, Victoria said. It's still valid. You mean I could legally access everything in his name? Yes. My hands shook as I picked up the power of attorney form. Such a simple, harmless-looking page. And yet, this could destroy him. That's the point. It could also land me in jail. Victoria shook her head. Not if you're smart. And you will be, because I'm going to help you. I know things about Adrian's accounts that even he doesn't know. Offshore holdings he's hiding from the IRS. Money he's been laundering through the insurance firm. Your power of attorney gives you the legal right to report suspicious activity, freeze accounts, liquidate assets purchased with stolen funds. My coffee had gone cold, but I drank it anyway. It tasted like dirt, or rage, or possibility. When? I asked. Tonight. Before he remembers the document exists and revokes it. Tonight, I repeated. The word felt like standing on the edge of a cliff with the wind whipping around me, the drop dizzyingly far below. Victoria stood and slid the entire portfolio toward me. Everything you need is in there. Account numbers. Passwords. A forensic accountant who owes me a favor. The federal prosecutor who's been investigating the insurance firm for 2 years, but never had enough evidence until now. Why don't you do it yourself? I asked. She paused at the end of the booth and looked down at me with something close to sympathy. Because it has to come from you. The jilted bride with nothing left to lose. They'll believe you. They'll protect you. And when Adrian realizes what's happening, when he comes crawling back, you'll have all the power. You sound very sure he'll come back. Victoria's smile was cold. Men like Adrian always come back when their money disappears. They don't know how to exist without it. She pulled on her coat, expensive cashmere that whispered wealth. The real question is, what will you do when he does come back? She left before I could answer, the bell above the door chiming her exit. I stayed for another hour, reading through every document, memorizing account numbers, absorbing the full scope of what Adrian had done. The embezzlement alone totaled over $500,000. The tax evasion was worse. And the money laundering through offshore accounts, that was federal prison territory.
My phone rang.
My mother. Honey, where are you? I'm worried. I'm fine, Mom. I'll be home soon. Adrian called the house. My blood iced.
What? He wanted to talk to you.
Something about canceling the honeymoon reservations. I told him to go to hell. A laugh slipped out of me. Unexpected. Good for you. Are you really okay? I looked at the mess of evidence spread in front of me, at the power I now held in my hands. I will be, I said. My childhood bedroom had become a war room. Documents covered every surface, my old desk, the dresser, even the carpet, arranged in careful columns. I'd organized everything by date, by crime, by level of destruction. The power of attorney documents sat in the center, like a queen on a chessboard. 11:47 p.m. In 13 minutes it would be Wednesday. 48 hours since I'd stood at that altar. It felt like a lifetime. It felt like seconds. I opened my laptop, fingers hovering above the keys. Victoria's forensic accountant had sent detailed instructions. First, the international accounts. Hardest to freeze. Most devastating once I did. Adrian had been smart, but not smart enough. He'd used the same password for everything. The date of our first kiss. The irony made my throat burn. Account 1, $347,000 in the Caymans. Click. Report suspicious activity. Click. Request immediate freeze pending investigation. Click. Forward all documentation to the federal prosecutor. Account 2, $198,000 in Switzerland.
Click.
Account 3, $500,000 in Singapore.
Click.
My hands moved mechanically. Each keystroke was a small, precise act of revenge. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. Numbers on a screen were too clean, too distant. I needed something personal. Something that would cut the way he had cut me. The house. Their beautiful Westchester house with its marble foyer and crystal chandeliers. The house where Eleanor had whispered comments about my weight to her dinner guests while I stood in the next room. The house where Adrian had promised we'd raise our children, even as he was planning to discard me. The deed was in Adrian's name, and I had power of attorney. The real estate lawyer Victoria recommended answered on the second ring despite the late hour. Miss Chin, I've been expecting your call. How fast can you list a property? With the right motivation, I can have it on the market by morning. Cash buyers only. Quick close. Price to move. Do it. I gave him the address, Adrian's information, the power of attorney details. Each word felt like pulling a trigger. There's a couple from Dubai looking for exactly this kind of property, he said. They can close in 72 hours. All cash. Perfect. Ms. Max, I should warn you, once this starts, it can't be stopped easily. Good. I hung up and moved on to the next phase. The cars, the boat, the insurance policies where I was still listed as beneficiary, a mistake on their part, in their hurry to humiliate me. Each asset was sorted, reported, frozen, or liquidated. By 3 a.m., I'd burned Adrian's entire life to the ground. The sunrise had just started filtering through my window when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. What have you done? Adrian's voice, but not the version I knew. This one was panicked, raw, stripped of charm. I haven't done anything. Don't lie to me. His breathing was harsh. My accounts are frozen. All of them. The FBI showed up at my office. They have documents, transactions, things they shouldn't know about. He stopped mid-sentence, probably realizing the call could be recorded. The embezzlement, I said calmly. The money laundering, the tax fraud. Silence. Then, quietly.
How?
You gave me power of attorney, remember? For the wedding planning. I kept my voice steady though my heart hammered against my ribs. You never revoked it. That's illegal. You can't just. I can.
And I did.
Reporting suspicious activity is literally a civic duty. I'll sue you. I'll destroy you. With what money, Adrian? Another silence. I could hear his breathing. Ragged, frantic. The house, he whispered. They're saying the house is being sold. Is it? How unfortunate. My mother, she's having a heart attack. From the stress. Like the heart attack my father almost had when he found out you'd been stealing from him for 4 years? I can explain. It was fraud. It was criminal fraud. And the FBI has all the evidence. Please. The word cracked. Please. You don't understand. Without that money, without the house, I have nothing. Melissa left me when the news broke. Her family wants nothing to do with me. My father's firm is under investigation. We'll lose everything. Like I lost everything. That was different. You're right, I said. It was different. You had a choice.
You chose to humiliate me.
You chose to destroy me publicly. You chose to let your mother call me worthless in front of 300 people. My voice was rising now, years of buried rage finally clawing its way up. You chose all of it. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry.
I was wrong. I was stupid. I let my mother influence me, but I never stopped love. Don't. The word was sharp enough to slice. Don't you dare say you loved me. But I did. I do. Please, we can fix this. We can still get married. I'll tell everyone I was having a breakdown. I'll go to therapy. I'll cut my mother out of our lives. Please just unfreeze the accounts. Stop the house sale. I'm begging you. I closed my eyes, remembering myself at that altar, begging him not to leave me, remembering the scattered roses, the whispers, the viral video that turned my pain into entertainment for millions. No, I'll do anything. Anything you want. What I want, I said slowly, is for you to feel what I felt. To stand in the wreckage of your life while everyone watches. To know that the person you trusted most was the one who destroyed you. You're not that cruel. I wasn't. A pause. You made me this way. I'll come over. We can talk in person. Please, just give me 10 minutes. Adrian. Yes. Do you really think I would help someone as worthless as you? I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Adrian's number. Then Eleanor's. Then numbers I didn't recognize, probably lawyers. I turned the phone off and set it aside. Outside my window, the world was waking up. Normal people heading to normal jobs, living normal lives that hadn't been dissected on social media. I envied them. I pitied them too. They'd never know the particular satisfaction of watching someone who tried to destroy you realize they'd handed you the weapons to destroy them instead. My laptop pinged. An email from the real estate agent. Property sold. Cash offered 20% above asking. Closing in 72 hours. Congratulations. 20% above asking. More money that would be seized immediately by federal investigators. Adrian wouldn't see a single penny. Another email from the forensic accountant. FBI raid currently in progress at Sterling Insurance. 12 arrests so far. Adrian Sterling in custody. Bail unlikely due to flight risk. I should have felt something. Satisfaction, maybe. Triumph.
Victory.
Instead, I felt hollow. The kind of hollow that echoes, that carries its own weight. 3 days later, the doorbell rang at 6 a.m. I knew who it was before I even got out of bed. There was something in the way it rang, not the polite ding-dong of a delivery driver, not the tentative ring of a neighbor. This was forceful, entitled, the sound of someone accustomed to doors opening on command. Eleanor. I took my time getting dressed. Let her wait. Let her stand on my parents' porch where the entire neighborhood could see her. The same neighbors who'd watched the viral video, who'd whispered about poor me and that awful family I'd almost married into. By the time I got downstairs, she was jabbing the doorbell repeatedly. My father stood at the door, peering through the peephole. It's her, he said quietly. Adrian's mother. I know. You don't have to. Yes, I do. I opened the door. Eleanor looked like she'd aged 10 years in 3 days. Her once perfect hair was pulled back in a messy clip. Her designer clothes were wrinkled. Without the armor of grooming and wealth, she seemed smaller. Human. You destroyed my son, she said without preamble. Your son destroyed himself. He's in federal prison. Do you understand that? Federal prison. He's facing 20 years. He stole over $500,000 from my family. He committed fraud. He laundered money. What did you think would happen when it came out? I expected you to slink away in shame, she spat. Like you should have. Even now, even with her son in prison and her life collapsing, she couldn't resist cruelty. It was as natural to her as breathing. Instead, you destroyed everything. I reported crimes. That's all. The house was purchased with stolen money. That house has been in my husband's family for 60 years. Then you probably shouldn't have put it in Adrian's name to avoid taxes. Her face twisted into something harsh, almost feral. For a split second, I thought she might hit me. Part of me hoped she would. Assault charges would be the perfect final flourish. But she restrained herself, barely. What do you want? She hissed. Money? Is that it? You want us to pay you off? With what money, Eleanor? It's all been frozen or seized. Then what? She demanded. What will it take to make you stop? I want you to admit it. Admit what? All of it. That you orchestrated the wedding humiliation. That you knew Adrian was stealing from us. That you encouraged him to date me for my family's money. That you've been pulling his strings since the day he was born. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone, showing her the recording app. I'm recording this, by the way, so choose your words carefully. That's illegal. Not in this state. One-party consent. I looked it up. She stared at me, and for the first time since I'd known her, I saw fear in Eleanor's eyes. Real fear. Do you want me to confess? Fine. Yes. I knew Adrian was taking money from your father's company. It was my idea. The boy never had any backbone, any initiative. I had to push him to be successful. And dating me? Also my idea. You were perfect, rich enough to be useful, insecure enough to be grateful. You would have been a perfectly manageable daughter-in-law if Adrian hadn't gotten greedy and fallen for that Crawford girl. So you decided to humiliate me instead. You were getting too comfortable, too confident, starting to question things. I couldn't have that. And the altar? Pure theater. I knew it would go viral. I knew it would destroy you so completely you'd never dare come after us. I underestimated you. Yes, I said quietly. You did. Is that what you wanted to hear? Does it make you feel better? No, but it will make excellent evidence for the civil suit. Her face drained of color. A civil suit? Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Defamation. My lawyer says the viral video alone is worth millions in damages. Your confession just made the case airtight. You can't sue us. We have nothing left. You have insurance. Liability insurance. Umbrella policies. Your husband still has his pension. You have jewelry, art, investments under your maiden name you thought no one knew about. I smiled, and it felt like baring teeth. Victoria Ashmont was very thorough. The sound that came out of Eleanor then wasn't quite a scream, wasn't quite a sob. It was something primal, the sound of someone realizing they'd been completely outmaneuvered. You've destroyed 3 generations of our family legacy. No, Eleanor, you did that yourself the moment you decided I wasn't good enough for your son. I just held up a mirror. She turned to leave, then paused. He really did love you, you know. In the beginning. Before I convinced him, he deserved better. I know, I said. That's what makes it worse. She walked down the porch steps, her shoulders hunched, her designer heels clicking against the concrete. The same sound that had echoed through the church as she'd walked away after humiliating me. But this time, she was the one leaving in defeat. I watched until her car disappeared around the corner. Then I went inside, closed the door, and threw up in the powder room. Revenge, it turned out, tasted like bile. 2 weeks passed in a blur of legal documents and FBI interviews. I'd become the star witness in a federal case unraveling years of financial crimes. The insurance firm had been shut down. 17 people had been arrested. The number kept climbing as more evidence surfaced. I'd moved back into my city apartment, needing distance from my parents' anxious hovering. The wedding dress still hung in the closet, but I'd covered it with a garbage bag. Out of sight, but not out of mind. Nothing was out of mind. The knock came at 10 p.m. on a Thursday, soft, hesitant. Not the aggressive doorbell pounding of Eleanor or the confident rhythm of FBI agents. This was the knock of someone afraid of the answer. I looked through the peephole. He was out on bail. His aunt had used her house as collateral, the only family member still willing to help him. He looked like a ghost of himself, gaunt, unshaven, wearing a wrinkled t-shirt and jeans instead of his usual tailored suits. His green eyes, those eyes that had once looked at me with such disgust, were hollow. I shouldn't have opened the door. Every logical part of me knew better. I opened it anyway. "Hi," he said. "How did you get past security?" I still had the key card. "You never asked for it back." Another oversight. There had been so many. "I'll need that back." He handed it over without argument, and somehow that was worse than if he'd protested. This wasn't the Adrian who'd stood at the altar full of cruel confidence. This was someone broken. "Can I come in?"
No. Please.
5 minutes. That's all. You've had 2 weeks to contact me.
Why now?
Because tomorrow I plead guilty. Tomorrow I go to prison for 12 years.
Plea deal.
He laughed, but it was hollow. My lawyer says I'm lucky. Could have been 20. What do you want, Adrian?
To apologize.
You did that on the phone. No, I begged on the phone. That was about saving myself. This is different. I leaned against the doorframe, keeping the distance between us.
So, apologize. I'm sorry.
The words came out raw, scraped from somewhere deep. Not for the money or the prison or losing everything. I'm sorry for what I did to you at the altar. The things I said, the way I let my mother. He stopped, swallowing hard. I'm sorry for all of it.
Why?
What do you mean why? Why are you sorry? Because you got caught? Because you're facing consequences?
No.
He looked at me directly for the first time, and I saw something I'd never seen in 4 years together.
Truth.
I'm sorry because I loved you, and I betrayed that love. I let my mother convince me that money and status mattered more than the person who actually saw me, actually loved me for who I was. And now I've lost everything, but losing you, that happened first. That was the real loss. Pretty words. True words. I know they don't matter. I know they don't change anything, but I needed to say them. To your face. Before I go away. We stood there in the doorway of the apartment we'd once planned to share, where we'd picked out furniture, where he'd proposed on the balcony, overlooking the city. All those memories felt like they belonged to different people. Maybe they did. The video has 53 million views now, I said. He flinched.
I know.
I can't go anywhere without being recognized. The fat bride who got dumped. You're not.
Don't. Don't try to take it back now.
You said what you really thought. What you've been thinking for who knows how long. What my mother had been telling me to think. That doesn't make it better. No, he agreed. It makes it worse because I knew better, and I said it anyway. A couple walked by in the hallway, glancing at us. They probably recognized us. Everyone did now.
I need you to leave, I said.
I know. But he didn't move. Can I ask you one thing?
What?
Was any of it real? The 4 years. Did you really love me, or was I just convenient? Rich enough to be useful, insecure enough to be grateful, like my mother said. The question hit like a physical blow, because the truth was complicated. The truth was ugly. I loved you, I said finally. But I also loved what you represented. Security. Acceptance. Proof that someone who looked like you could want someone who looked like me. Maybe that's not real love. Maybe that's just me dressed up in prettier clothes. But it felt real at the time. He nodded slowly.
And now?
Now I nothing you. You're not worth hate anymore. You're just nothing. That hurt him more than anger could have. I saw it in the way his shoulders dropped, the way his breath caught. I deserve that. Yes, you do. He turned to go, then paused. The woman in the video, the one at the altar, she was beautiful. My mother was wrong. I was wrong. You were beautiful, and I threw it away for someone who disappeared the moment my money did. I'll have 12 years to think about that. Adrian.
Yeah?
I'm glad you're going to prison. Not because of revenge or justice or any of that. I'm glad because maybe, without your mother whispering in your ear, you'll finally figure out who you actually are. Maybe you'll become someone worth being. Maybe, he said. Probably not, though. Then he was gone, walking down the hallway toward the elevator, toward federal prison, toward a future he'd built with his own choices. I closed the door and slid down until I was sitting on the floor. I didn't cry. I was too empty for tears. The apartment felt too quiet, too still, like the air after an explosion, when your ears are still ringing from the blast. My phone buzzed. Victoria, he came to see you. How did you know? I know everything. How did it go? He apologized, and nothing. It's over.
No, dear.
It's just beginning. You're free now. Really free. You've burned it all down. Now you get to decide what to build in the ashes.
I don't know how to do that.
Yes, you do. You've already started. The civil suit will set you up financially for life. The book deal I've arranged will tell your side of the story. The speaking engagements will help other women who've been publicly humiliated. You're going to rise from this stronger than before. What if I don't want to be strong? What if I just want to be normal? Normal is overrated. Besides, after 53 million people have seen you at your worst, normal isn't really an option anymore.
So be extraordinary instead.
She hung up before I could respond. Classic Victoria. I stayed there on the floor for a long time, thinking about ashes and phoenixes, and whether revenge was really as sweet as people claimed. It wasn't. It was necessary, maybe even justified, but not sweet. It tasted like nothing, like air, like the space between heartbeats. My wedding dress was still in the closet, wrapped in plastic like evidence in a crime scene. Tomorrow I decided I would burn it. Not in anger or ceremony, just practicality. It had served its purpose. It had been my costume for the worst day of my life, but also for the day I discovered my own power. The dress didn't define me. Adrian's words didn't define me. The viral video didn't define me. I got to define me. And tomorrow I would start. The studio lights were hot on my face, but I'd gotten used to them. 5th interview this month. The book had hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list 3 weeks ago, and wasn't slowing down. So, the interviewer said, leaning forward with practiced concern, take us back to that day, the day at the altar. I'd told this story so many times now it felt like reciting lines from a play, but somehow it still hurt. Some wounds scab over, but never quite heal. They just become part of your topography. Landmarks on the map of who you've become. It was the kind of perfect day you dream about. I began, the words flowing automatically. Blue sky, church bells, 300 guests. I was standing at the altar in a dress that cost more than some people's cars, holding a bouquet of white roses. waiting for my life to begin. And then I drew a breath. And then my fiancé looked at me with complete disgust and asked if I really thought he would marry someone as fat as me. The audience gasped. They always did, even though they knew exactly what was coming. There was something about hearing it spoken aloud that made it real in a way the viral video couldn't quite capture. The video has been viewed over 100 million times now, the interviewer said. How do you cope with that level of exposure? You don't cope. You adapt. You realize privacy is an illusion anyway, that everyone is performing all the time. At least my performance has a purpose. Speaking of purpose, let's talk about the Adrian Sterling case. He's currently serving 12 years for embezzlement, fraud, and money laundering. Do you feel responsible?
No.
I feel responsible for reporting crimes committed against my family. What happened after that was justice, not revenge. Some people say a lot of things. That I should have handled it privately. That I went too far. That I destroyed a man's life over hurt feelings. I looked directly into the camera. Those people didn't stand at that altar. They didn't watch their family savings disappear into offshore accounts. They didn't discover that 4 years of their life had been built on calculated lies. Do you ever regret it? I thought about Adrian in prison orange instead of designer suits. About Eleanor living in a studio apartment after losing everything in the civil suit. About the insurance firm that had once employed hundreds of people and was now shuttered. I regret that it was necessary, I said carefully. I regret trusting the wrong people. I regret not seeing the truth sooner. But I don't regret protecting myself and my family. I don't regret refusing to be a victim. The civil suit settlement was rumored to be in 8 figures. I'm not allowed to discuss the exact amount, but yes, it was substantial. And what are you doing with the money? My father's business has been made whole. The rest is going into a foundation for women who've been publicly humiliated, especially in the digital age. Revenge porn, viral breakups, public shamings. We provide legal support, therapy, PR help. A way to reclaim their narratives. Like you've reclaimed yours. I haven't reclaimed anything. You can't reclaim something that was never really yours. I've built something new. And Adrian, have you had any contact? 1 letter. 3 pages of cramped handwriting I'd burned without reading past the first line. I dream about roses. No, I said. No contact. His mother, Eleanor, recently gave an interview claiming you orchestrated everything, that you entrapped them. I laughed. It was genuine, which surprised me. Eleanor needs someone to blame besides herself. I'm convenient. One final question. If you could go back, knowing what you know now, would you still walk down that aisle? The studio fell silent. Even the crew held their breath. Yes, I said. Because that moment, horrible as it was, taught me the most valuable lesson of my life. The only person who gets to determine my worth is me. Adrian and Eleanor tried to destroy me by telling the world I wasn't good enough. Instead, they freed me from ever needing anyone else's approval again. Freedom is a hard one, always has been. The best kinds usually are. The interview ended, and I stepped out into the Manhattan afternoon. My phone lit up with 17 messages, 3 new interview requests, and a text from Victoria. Drinks tonight? There's someone I want you to meet. I almost said no. I'd been turning down setups for 6 months. But something in me had shifted recently, some frozen place inside me finally beginning to thaw. 1 drink, I texted back. The restaurant Victoria chose was elegant but understated, nothing like the flashy places Adrian used to drag me to. The man she introduced me to was a writer, tall, slightly rumpled, kind eyes, a self-deprecating smile. His name was James. I saw your interview today, he said over wine. You were brilliant. You mean I performed well?
No.
I mean you told the truth in a world that prefers pretty lies. That's brilliant. We talked for 3 hours, about books, about pain, about the strange experience of having your worst moment turned into public entertainment. He'd survived his own humiliation, a plagiarism scandal that was eventually proven false, though not before it had already incinerated his career. The funny thing about rock bottom, he said, is that it's solid. You can build on it. Is that what you did? Still building. You? Still building. When he walked me home, he didn't try to kiss me, didn't even ask for my number. He simply handed me a card with his information. "If you ever want to talk about something besides our respective public humiliations," he said, "I make excellent coffee." I watched him walk away and looked at the card. Simple black text on white stock. No pretense. No performance.
My phone rang.
Adrian's mother. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "What do you want, Eleanor?" "To tell you something you should know." Her voice sounded older, raspier, like she'd started smoking again after 20 years clean. "I'm listening. Adrian isn't in prison." My blood went cold. "What?" "He killed himself 2 days ago. Hung himself with a bedsheet. They haven't released it to the media yet, but they will tomorrow." The city noise evaporated. The ground tilted. "You're lying." "I'm many things," she said, "but I'm not a liar. He left a note for you." My throat tightened. What did it say? "Tell her the roses were real." Eleanor's voice cracked. That's all it said. She hung up. I stood on the sidewalk as people flowed around me like water around a stone. The roses were real. What roses? Then I knew. The roses from our beginning. Our first date 4 years ago. White roses, he said, symbolized new beginnings, pure intentions. I'd kept one, pressed it into a book I still had somewhere. The roses were real. Not the money. Not the performance. Not the manipulation. But that first moment, that first bouquet, that first feeling, that had been real. I started walking, not knowing where my feet were taking me. My phone rang again, Victoria, then my mother, then the FBI. Tomorrow the world would know. Tomorrow there would be questions, cameras, people demanding to know how the jilted bride felt about becoming the widow who wasn't. How did I feel?
Guilty.
Relieved. Angry. Human. I ended up at the church where we were supposed to be married. It was empty, dark except for the eternal flame near the altar. I sat in the back pew, staring at the spot where I'd stood in that white dress, where my life had shattered and reshaped into something else entirely. "I'm sorry," I whispered into the darkness. Sorry to Adrian, to Eleanor, to myself. Sorry for the people we might have been if we'd been braver, kinder, better. The church didn't answer. God didn't answer. But in the silence, I found something that felt like forgiveness. Not for Adrian or Eleanor, but for the girl who'd once stood at that altar believing she needed someone else to validate her existence. She had been doing her best with what she knew. We all had. I walked home through the city night. Tomorrow would bring new battles, new interviews, new people asking how the jilted bride felt about the ex-fiancé who died before he could face consequences. But tonight I would sleep. Tonight, I would dream of roses, not scattered on marble, but held in nervous hands on a first date when everything was still possible. The roses were real. Maybe that was enough. Maybe it had to be.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.